You've no doubt heard of many of the famous lawmen of the Old West, Wyatt Earp, Masterson, Wild Bill Hickock, and many others. But do you know the story of Bass Reeves? He served 32 years as a deputy U.S. Marshal in the Indian Territory, compared to less than a decade for the more well-known and celebrated lawmen. Being a peace officer in the chaotic and violent world of the Indian Territory in the late 1800s was a dangerous business, and being a black man made it even more perilous. That makes the saga of Bass Reeves that much more incredible. Bass was born into slavery in 1838 in Crawford County, Arkansas, and enslaved to an Arkansas legislator named William Still Reeves. Reeves moved to Texas, and Bass became a favored slave because of his proficiencies, especially with horses. William Reeves' son George joined the Confederacy in the Civil War and took Bass with him to the front. Sometime early in the war, Bass escaped and fled to the Indian Territory. The Indian Territory was in what is modern-day Oklahoma and was an area set aside by the U.S. government for the purpose of relocation of Native American Indians. The Cherokee, Chickasaw, Choctaw, Creek, and Seminole relocated to the Indian Territory and became known as the Five Civilized Tribes because they adopted white ways such as schools, housing, clothing, and even kept black slaves. Since the tribal police had no jurisdiction over non-Indian citizens, and there were few other deterrents to criminal activity and refuge, the area became a magnet for scoundrels of all manner who were looking for a safe area to hide and continue their criminal pursuits. From the time he escaped in the early 1860s until he became a legally free man in 1865, Bass lived among the Indian tribes and learned several Indian languages until he was officially freed in 1865. At that point in his life, he moved with his wife Nellie to a farm near Van Buren, Arkansas. He and Nellie raised 11 children together. In 1875, an event took place that would change Bass's life forever. Isaac Parker, who would later become known as the hanging judge, was appointed federal judge for the Indian Territory. His court was located in Fort Smith, Arkansas. Judge Parker appointed James Fagan as district U.S. Marshal and directed him to hire 200 deputy U.S. Marshals. Fagan knew of Bass Reeves and his reputation for knowing the Indian Territory well and his abilities to speak several Indian languages. He recruited him as a deputy, and Reeves became the first black deputy U.S. Marshal to serve west of the Mississippi River. Bass was well suited for the position to which he was appointed. He was tall, very athletic, a natural on a horse, and a crack marksman. His dedication to his job, work ethic, and proficiency at carrying out his duties made him a favorite of Judge Parker. Reeves was not only dedicated and relentless in his pursuit of his prey, he was smart and cunning in how he went about his business. One of the major duties of the deputy marshals of the Indian Territory was to track down, arrest, and bring to justice wanted men in the territory. Criminals came to fear Bass as fearless and knew if he had a writ to serve on them that their days of freedom were probably numbered. There were a couple of wanted brothers for which he held arrest warrants, with a total of $5,000 worth of rewards on them. He tracked them down at their mother's house, posed as a wanted man himself, and coaxed a meal and an invitation to stay overnight from the mother. While the fugitives were asleep, he put handcuffs on the two and led them to a transportation wagon, all the while catching an earful from the bamboozled mom. Jim Webb was another notorious crook that Bass arrested. This time he posed as an out-of-work cowhand. Webb sniffed out the ruse and got the drop on Bass, who was able to turn the tables on him and even shoot his accomplice. Webb was delivered to Judge Parker's jail in Fort Smith, but was able to post a $17,000 bond and gained his freedom. 2 years later, Bass was sent to recapture Webb. He tracked him down, and Webb bolted on foot, knowing that if he got captured again, a death sentence was almost assured. Bass was mounted and gave chase. Webb stopped and turned to face Reeves and started firing his rifle at his adversary. The first shot hit the saddle horn. The second cut a button from his shirt. The third ripped the reins from his hands, and the fourth tore a hole in his hat. Bass was able to fire twice at Webb, hitting him both times. As he lay dying, Webb said to Bass, "You are a brave, brave man. I have killed 11 men, and I expected you to be the 12th. Webb gave Bass his revolver out of respect. Webb was buried, and Bass turned in the desperado's boots and gun belt as proof he had gotten his man. There were many such dramatic arrests and deeds of daring and heroism attributed to Bass Reeves, but one arrest is singularly the most incredible. When Bass's son Benjamin caught his wife cheating on him for the second time, he killed her. Out of respect for Bass, none of the other lawmen in the Indian Territory wanted to serve the writ on Benjamin. Bass was a man of great honor and had a profound respect for the law, so he made what had to be an excruciating decision. He decided to personally make the arrest and turn his son in to face trial. Benjamin was convicted and sentenced to life in prison, but because he was a model prisoner, was released after serving 11 years and lived out his life in Muskogee, Oklahoma as a law-abiding and well-respected citizen. Bass Reeves' tenure as a deputy U.S. Marshal ended in 1907, the day Oklahoma became a state. State and local peace officers took over federal officers' duties. Bass Reeves served as a deputy U.S. Marshal for 32 years, longer than any of the rest. He was the only deputy that started with Judge Parker and stayed until statehood. He arrested more than 3,000 men and women, including blacks, whites, and Indians. He had many close calls, but was never wounded. He killed 14 men in the line of duty. Bass was not interested in retirement. At almost 70 years old, he was hired onto the Muskogee police force. He walked with a cane, but still instilled fear into potential lawbreakers. During his 2 years on the force, not a single crime was committed in his patrol area while he was on duty. Bass Reeves died on January 12, 1910, at the age of 71. His funeral was attended by blacks, whites, and Indians. A fellow police officer, Bud Ledbetter, called Bass one of the bravest men this country has ever known. Unfortunately, the Bass Reeves legacy faded over time. However, there seems to be more interest these days about the big lawman who helped tame a big country. If you enjoyed this video, give a thumbs up, make a comment, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel. As always, thanks for watching.